Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Slick Pivot Sessions. I'm Liz Ward and this is the podcast where we dig, delve and deconstruct the journeys of people who have pivoted their careers. I know it can feel rough when you're at a pivot point, so we'll be stripping back the sugarcoating and uncovering the pitfalls and progress of our guests, unearthing some practical advice for those of you wanting to make a change. Join me as we crack the formula for making a successful pivot in your life or work. Today's episode is brought to you by The Marshmallowist, gourmet marshmallows in unexpected flavours. If you're stuck for a Mother's Day gift, or you want something more fun than wine and a box of chocolates to take to your next dinner party, then these marshmallows are for you. You can choose your flavours from raspberry and champagne, blueberry and gin, or my own favourite, toasted coconut. To save 15% on your next order, simply go to themarshmallowist.com and enter the code SLICKPIVOT at the checkout. Why not treat someone today to some mallow love? Today I'm joined by Fleur Emery. Fleur is an outspoken startup veteran with an uncanny way of sniffing out emerging trends and making things happen. She has 15 years in the food industry under her belt. She launched 2 product ranges into major retailers, and she now uses her startup experience to help other founders. She has a client roster that includes Pippa Nut, Miso Tasty, and Black Bee Honey. Recently, Fleur spent 3 years setting up a premium ready meal business. She had a product range ready to go, funding in place and interest from supermarkets, yet decided to pull the plug and pivot her career. I chatted to Fleur about what motivated her to walk away from that food business, how she has rebuilt herself as a startup expert working school hours, and she shares her advice for those of you wanting to start a food business. This interview covers loads about entrepreneur life, trusting your gut, and pivoting on your skill set. Fleur is straight talking. She is a no-nonsense person. She makes stuff happen. Get ready for some practical advice. And if you like this episode with Fleur, if you find it interesting or helpful, drop us a review and a rating on wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews really help us to grow this podcast, reach more people, and bring you fantastic guests. Okay, here goes. Hi, Fleur, and welcome to the Slick Pivot Sessions.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
I was keen to chat to you because so many people are starting or dreaming of starting food businesses these days, and you've had 3. I'd love us to dive into your entrepreneur journey and all those pivot points along the way. Can you rewind for us? How did it all begin?
Okay, so 15 years ago, my sister and I started a porridge business from home. And prior to that, we had no idea about running a business. And critically, in those days, there were no incubators, there were no business forums. There was kind of nothing. We were staggering in the dark. And there wasn't really an independent food scene like there is now. So we started making instant porridge in a pot. We were the first people to do that. And sold it in my sister's friend's deli, and then got a bit of a rush of blood to the head and sent it to Selfridges, and they stocked it, and then it kind of went big, and we sold it in Waitrose and in hotel mini bars at Soho House and on planes and on trains. And we just had a really great ride for sort of about 5 years at the beginning of the independent food scene, learning everything on the job. It was quite an innocent time in a way, because we branded it ourselves. We did everything. We didn't know what we were doing, and we kind of got away with it and had a great time.
Yeah.
We had some big challenges when the recession came, and we had an investment partner who got involved, and things sort of got a bit shit got real, as they said. Sorry, this is family friendly.
That's okay.
And so, we didn't get we didn't go out with a bang. We went out with a whimper, and sort of went home to sort of lick my wounds, and then saying I'll never do another startup. And then, of course, did another startup. Got back in the saddle and created a low alcohol, all natural craft lager called Green and Pleasant. And
How long was it between those two?
I probably took a year off.
Right.
And to be honest, what's interesting was at that point, I perceived that project to have failed.
Uh-huh. And you said you
Yeah.
kind of went home licking your wounds a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you really have to digest that before being able
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
kind of relaunch again?
So much had happened. It had been kind of a real baptism of fire. And we really kind of came back down to earth, sort of like saying, sort of what just happened. My dad, I remember being, in my sort of childhood bedroom, my dad saying they're opening a new branch of Marks and Spencer's and they have a management training scheme. You want to get up there? And being like, no! And no offense to the managers of Marks and Spencer's, but
Cheers,
not
Dad.
for me. So I just thought, I can't do that. So got back to London and cracked on and started a beer company and made a beautiful brand. That time it was more professional, so crowdfunded it, took money in at the beginning, worked with a very talented design partner called Joby Barnard, who is, he's just the best, and created a really beautiful brand and a lovely product and sold it into the Ritz Hotel and a load of other fancy hotels and had a great time with that for a few years.
Yeah, and do you feel like you went into that one with everything that you learned from the Grasshopper project?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Although I still made plenty of mistakes.
Yeah,
It's definitely, a startup business, building a business like that is a sort of art form. And there's loads of, there's no set way of doing it. There's decisions to be made all the way along and you don't know what's going to impact. The slightest thing can trip you up.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, I always say, you have to enjoy the journey. I've absolutely loved my career. Honestly, it's just been very rich personally for me in terms of the amount of stuff you have to learn. I love to work. I love to be busy. I love to do lots of things at different times. I like to have to make decisions on the hoof. I love having to talk people around, selling things, all that kind of stuff is just absolutely great fun for me.
Yeah, so being an entrepreneur, that kind of in the startup world fits with all of those qualities.
Yeah. And you have, unless you enjoy it, don't get involved because the risks are massive and the chance of walking away with a big chunk of cash at the end are pretty small. So got stuck in and I just loved it. It doesn't really feel like work to me. It just feels like talking to lots of different people about something that I'm really interested in.
What do you think it was that helped you bounce back and start the beer company?
I have a massive amount of self-belief, which is both an asset and a liability depending on the circumstance. If my friend said, do you want to come skiing? Have you ever been skiing before? And I said, well, I've never been, but I think I'm brilliant. And in that situation, and when it's quite dangerous. So we do the heli skiing. Yeah, I'll take a snowboard. I haven't done that. Let's take that. That looks more fun. You can just break your neck. But it definitely has helped me sort of drive projects forward. I'm not at the end of the day, I lie down and go to sleep. I don't, I'm not staring at the ceiling worrying about if this happens, how am I going to look after myself? I always know I'll be fine. I'm very resourceful. Mm-hmm. And maybe this work is given me that, or maybe I was like that before, but I don't worry about, what happens if I get old and I don't have enough money. I don't look forward to retiring. And I'm definitely a person who sort of takes action. And I speak to people all day about what they're doing. And often, daily, I listen to people's projects and think, oh, I'd like a bit of that. I'd like to get involved in that. Mm-hmm. If I wasn't doing that, or maybe I'll do that, collaboration, working on other people's projects with them. I have my fingers in a lot of pies. I have about 5 revenue streams, small, I'm not rich, but I'm great. I've got some savings. I'm self-supporting of me and my daughter who's in private school. I only work about 24 hours a week because I work while she's at school. And I get money in from 4 or 5 different places. And all of those places are things which are fun. Yeah. So I feel like it's a win.
That's a win. So let's get to that. So you did Grasshopper, the porridge company.
Yep.
Then the craft lager.
Yep.
And what happened to that?
The same, we had some success, we had some commercial success, we had some complications with growth, and so moved on to a third project and went for it again, and went bigger this time, raised some money this is 3 years ago, raised some money to start a premium ready meal company, so a Charlie Bingham style sort of shepherd's pie and stew business to sell into Waitrose and Sainsbury's.
And you walked away from that?
I did. I worked on it for 3 years. It was really hard work. The meat industry is vile. And I found that out sort of in real life with my own eyes, and did, found a great manufacturing partner and got a range of products ready to sell into a supermarket. The supermarket wanted them, and I realized I wasn't pleased about it, which was a bit of a surprise.
So you worked on it from concept to getting it to,
yes,
to creating that product, getting it in front of the buyers, having them say yes. And then, and that was that the pivot point when you said, you know what, this is not for me?
Yeah, I got an email through saying, they don't sort of say yes until I should caveat, for anyone listening, until you have a purchase order saying this is how many we're buying, it's not, the job's not done. But they were saying, yes, this is what they were looking for. And we were negotiating the finer elements at that point. And
so you're on the final straight, and you could kind of
see
this coming to almost getting to shelves and starting to become quite real.
And I got the email through saying, great, come and see us. And again, and I noticed within my own body that all the usual things that happen to me physiologically when I get a win like that were not happening. I did not have butterflies. I didn't want to tell everyone. I just looked at the email and felt a bit neutral. And then I started asking myself questions about that, and went to bed and had my first sleepless night in, a long time.
Wow, that must have been a really crazy day for you after all that work to not get the reaction inside you that you were expecting. Yeah. What was going on in your head?
It's almost like, like an inner voice. Over the years, I'm in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. So like 20 years ago, I cleaned up, and I did a lot of work, a lot of therapy, and a lot of chanting and Buddhism and all this kind of stuff, right? Loads of yoga. Did all of that work. And one of the things that kind of came out of that, which is amazing, apart from sort of 20 years sobriety and clean living, is that I definitely have that voice of intuition, and it speaks to me loudly. And almost like a different person talking to me sometimes, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is you really get to know what's right for you. The bad thing is sometimes it tells you things that you very much do not want to hear, like this. And at that point, I was lying in bed, and it was like this inner voice. I was saying, right, I've got to go to this meeting in Macclesfield or somewhere. And my inner voice said, I'm not going, and you can't make me.
Right.
And I was just like, well, yes, we are. And it's just like, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to do this. And it's almost like a child, just like, come on, get your coat on. We've paid. We're going.
Yes.
Everyone's expecting us. And the kid just looking, just saying, yeah, I'm not going to go.
And how do you, because I work with a lot of people that feel fear when they're about to do something scary. And how do you know, through all your experiences and, doing stretchy comfort zone things, how do you know the difference between that? Really, it's a really solid like advice to yourself versus fear.
Practice. So for doing it for 20 years, so it is something that you're encouraged to get in touch with when you go into like rehab and AA. So it's like a spiritual practice of like every morning when I wake up, I just scan myself, like what's happening today, how am I feeling about that, and so check in with myself. And at the end of the day, I scan and I just say, oh yeah, and I like sort of try and experience gratitude for where I am and what I've got, and reflect on the day. Have I done anything wrong? Could I have done anything differently? And try and feel how I'm feeling. And I've done that every day for 20 years, and you just kind of get better at it. And sometimes it tells you this I'll give you a really good example. Sometimes you meet someone in romantically, and you get really excited and things go on, and you know that they're not really right for you, but you don't, you want to be, I want to be with someone, I want to have a boyfriend, he's nice to me, he, takes, he remembers things, he makes me food or whatever it is, so there's these things that we want, but we know underneath it that the connection isn't there, that it has, and you have a choice to either listen to that and break up, or to ignore it, and it just gets louder until eventually you've moved in with them.
Yeah.
They're doing the crossword next to you, and they smile and ask you what 4B across is, and you smile at them, and inside you're thinking, who are you and why are you in my bed?
Yeah, and you've been just ignoring all of the signals
Yeah.
that are being shown to you.
Yeah.
And when I work with my coaching clients, we look at this as feedback, especially like when you're trying new things and you're going, oh, shall I try this new career out? Is really tuning into that intuition, really tuning into those feelings, that internal feedback you feel, and the things that you see around you when something happens, like getting an email. How does it make you feel?
Exactly.
You know,
when you spend time with certain people, I do that really carefully.
mm,
When I've left them, I think, how do I feel?
yeah,
Do I feel undermined? Do I feel validated? Was that fun for me?
yeah,
Asking yourself those questions. I think one of the things that you mentioned, which is really, really interesting, is this idea of looking at our careers as a series of questions that we're posing. There's my parents' generation was sort of commence a career in a job and continue along that path. And that it's not really like that these days. And especially if you're self-employed or you start businesses, everything changes all the time. And everything that I try, when I try an opportunity, I just think, well, I'm going to try it. I'm asking a question. And then if I don't enjoy it, or it doesn't have the outcome, I just think, I don't think, oh, I failed. I just think, okay, I've got more information now. What's my next step? Am I going to continue putting my energy into that, or will I sort of tie that off and then start something else? So when I did my most recent pivot 4 months ago, one of the sort of one of the assets I had was sort of 15 years information in my brain about how startups work, what it takes, etc. And I looked at people making online courses, and I thought, well, that looks like a low-hanging fruit. I can just put some of this in online courses and switch on a revenue stream quite easily. So I did an online course on how to do online courses,
yeah.
learned pretty quick, started videoing, boom, 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 and had 3 up and running, which were pretty decent. And what I realized is that the promotion aspect of them, selling them, I just wasn't really my cup of tea. And so they were up and no one was really buying them because I just didn't want to do the hard sell. I tried it, and I had one bash of it, on Instagram, and I sold a few and, made a few £100, but then I just thought, it's not really for me. It's just like asking a question, is that for me? And then I thought, actually not really. And today I dismantled them. I just went on to Thinkific and switched off my account and just closed them. And I just think, that's just good to know. I'm not going to do online courses, not really my bag.
And you dipped your toe in, you stepped into it. So, what does it feel like to step into the shoes of this online course world?
Yeah.
And what's the actual reality of it? There's a lot of people out there saying they're making 100 grand a month, but their day to day is probably lots of tech and lots of funnels and systems and marketing,
which is not really for me.
Actual course.
Yeah, exactly.
And so tell me about, where are you now then? So you went from walking away from Whetstone after that email and saying, you know what, this is not.
And I literally woke up the next day and I felt relief. I felt like I'd put down a weight, because when you have a live project like that with lots of investors and stakeholders and expectations, it is a big responsibility. And I've been living with a live startup of my own like that for kind of 15 years. So to put it down and to actually say, right, I'm not going to do that anymore, it actually doesn't fit in with my life as a parent. I practice attachment parenting. I co-sleep with my daughter. I don't have babysitters and things. So I didn't know I was going to be that parent. I didn't know I'd be like that. I wondered, maybe I'll be some mega career-y parent, but I wasn't. We sort of don't live like that. We're together a lot. So I don't have much time to work. I don't want to do another startup. So I wouldn't even say I made that decision. I came to understand that that was a situation. I accepted that that was a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to do that. And literally woke up, felt like I'd put a weight down. So felt this sort of levity and slight euphoria.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what's my career going to be? I have no idea. And I've got to start, I'm supporting us. What am I going to do? And I felt great.
So it was like a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, I felt and I'm really happy about it. I can do anything I want.
But you understood like where you were on the map. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I always think, when you're trying to plan your next thing, often everyone's thinking, okay, where am I going to go? You actually have to understand like your current location, like where you're actually starting from, what that reality really looks like. So when you have clarity on that, you can start writing the next chapter, as they say. So you're there, you're feeling relief.
One thing I would say about that one thing about saying, in that position, I know that there'll be lots of people listening who are maybe pivoting out of jobs where they've been suppressed or unhappy or underexpressed, or they might be pivoting out of sort of situations when they haven't worked much or they're a bit stuck. And I do get that situation is very different from what I'm describing. So I'd had 15 years in an industry with people telling me I was great, having some big successes, being in the paper, people hiring me to speak on stage, inviting me to come and, cut a ribbon, for a sports hall and stuff like that. So me sort of just saying, oh yeah, I felt great about having no plans. That's me now. 15 years ago when I started Grasshopper, I'd had rubbish employment experiences and felt a lack of confidence. I didn't know where I fitted in the world, and trying to pivot out of that into Grasshopper, that was really, really hard. So if you're listening and my sort of cheerful optimism is annoying, I do get that. I do understand that. But faith grows. And because I kept trying new things and kept listening and kept moving forward, by the time, I'm 46, by the time I'm here with what I've done, I'm feeling pretty positive about it.
But it was through that experimentation, exploration.
And I had the luxury of doing that. I think it's really good to acknowledge my own privilege that, I've got a supportive family. My family have got money. So even though they don't pay money into my bank account every month, which they haven't done, if I mess up, I'm not going to be homeless. That's my kid got a book for Christmas about food banks, and it's a really nice book. It's a mum and a kid who live together, and on the pages they look like us, they sleep together, they're sat, chatting, and was talking to her about the fact that the difference between her and me is that if we have a problem, we've got somewhere we can go, and we've got someone who will come and pick us up and take us there and can pay for things until we get sorted out. So my whole kind of mega pivot fest over the last 15 years has been with a safety net.
And that's good to know, because a lot of times people don't say that, and so knowing that you've got that
freedom to fail,
and access to finance to support you.
Education, confidence that has come out of a private education, where I feel confident to walk into an industry where I know nothing and listen and sit down and take my place. That's a privilege.
I would agree. So you've worked really hard for the business. You've reached a point in time where you realised it was not right for you. You've made that step to unravel and to walk away, which must have been tricky. How did you then rebuild and come to where you are now?
So 4 months ago, Whetstone closed. I woke up, I thought, what's my job? Recently, I had met a publicist, a young woman called Lucy Werner, who was writing a book. She approached me, said hi. I liked her instantly, just one of those things. I started chatting to her and said, look, I've got no career. And got into a conversation with her and did some work with her when she challenged me, and she said, listen, you've got 15 years worth of expertise in an industry starting businesses and you don't call yourself an expert, you don't have a website, you're not on Instagram, and what do you do? You think you're going to sit there and people are going to come and knock on your door and hire you? Well, grow up.
Mm-hmm. And what were you wanting them to hire you for?
To speak, to teach. Well, not I like doing workshops. I love doing podcasts. I'd like to broadcast. That's my overall goal, to become a broadcaster. And my bread and butter in the background has always been coaching other startups, usually in food or fashion.
Yeah, and you've worked with Pip and Nuts.
Yeah.
And help them get to where they are today. So you wanted to become a broadcaster, be more in the public eye. And
to raise my profile, to raise my own profile. And to become an expert voice, really.
Yeah. And so what did you do?
So I followed a plan that she gave me, where I looked at what was special about me, how I wanted other people to see me. I made business goals with regard to how much I wanted to earn, who I wanted to work for. I got a pin board and bolted it to the wall and put lists on there about, I'm looking at it now, which workspaces that I'd like to work in, which groups I'd like to work with, which podcasts I'd like to be on. And made some objectives to do with my turnover, my Instagram following. And I looked at what subjects I want to talk about: startups, female founders, and solo parenting. What I want my reputation to be as a women in business expert, a host, a broadcaster, to be a columnist. And went about raising my profile on Instagram and providing free content and pursuing these people on my list. And so she's just written a book on it. And it's pretty great. So either try and hire Lucy Werner if she's available, or buy her book, I think, which is out tomorrow. And it's basically how to raise your own profile without hiring anyone.
Yeah, I have a copy of the book too, and it's brilliant.
Have you?
Hype brilliant, Yourself, by Lucy Werner. And I'll put the link in the show notes.
I literally have done what it says in that book, and in 4 months it has worked. So one of the things on my list was that I want to work at the Wing, the new women's workspace with the feminist agenda that's just opened in London. And she said, okay, you need to speak at this event in the summer. There's this festival thing. She said, you need to speak and put a panel together at this event. And I said, well, this is my 1 week family holiday in Devon, and it's in Lincoln. And she said, well, you need to do it. So I drove to Lincoln because the trains were broken that weekend, went to some dance festival in the middle of a field, which is my worst nightmare, and put together a panel, did what she said, then drove like 5 hours to my family in Devon on holiday.
Wow.
And it was right
there. After all of that,
it was a lot of work. I mean, I trusted her, and I did it. And I did a few of those things and got noticed really quickly by the people from the Wing, got invited in to a meeting there, got on well. So my talent is getting on well with people. I liked them. I liked what they were doing. They liked me. And then Lucy supported me with negotiating to work with them, and sent them a proposal, and they said yes. And it's just been an absolute dream gig. It's exactly what I wanted. And it's 4 months of 4 months in, that was one of the big things on my list ticked off. So I'm a happy customer.
Wow. And it just shows when you are quite specific about something that you want, you can be really focused on making that happen.
If you look on my Instagram, you'll see I'm not messing about with it. I mean,
no, you're not. You're certainly not. Your Instagram
very,
is
very organized.
You're doing Monday night live interviews with founders of startups.
Yeah, female founders Monday nights. Tuesdays, startup surgery. So it's answering one big question about business on my Insta stories. I'm doing collaborations each week with other female business communities like Mother Hustler, Found and Flourish, Sisters in Business, Coven Girl Gang. I've got my column in Courier, and it's just like, it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening, and that's how I've seen you through Instagram and really supporting the startups, and I think that something that I see from this is that what you've done is look at all your kind of career equity, all the things that you've learned, your kind of like bank of knowledge and experience, and you have put that into this new career. So you haven't lost anything that you learned before. And a lot of people sometimes think that when they are starting out on a new path, we're kind of like letting go of everything else. But I'd say, you know, it's all coming with you, and it fuels your next move, and you're channeling that into new places. And so that's
I would say my tips there as well are that sometimes, because what we've been doing becomes so normal for us, we forget how to for people who don't know how to do it, it's hard. So I've starting a business for me is just like falling off a log because I've done it so many times. But if you've never done it, it's really hard. So that information that I have in my brain is worth money. It's valuable to other people. And that applies to any kind of person. If you know how to dismantle a computer, I don't. So that's a really valuable thing to know. So I would encourage people to think about what it is they know that other people don't know.
yeah.
And my second tip would be, don't be shy to just give information away. Freedom of information and a culture of sharing, for me, is the best way to drive actual sales. If you show up for things and give freely of yourself, and you speak on, you share expertise and tips on Instagram or at events or on Facebook pages, that's how you get hired, in my view.
And so, what if somebody's sitting here listening, thinking they've got a food startup idea, they've got a product idea, and they're like, okay, it's a dream, but I haven't started doing anything with it. What would your tips be to them, with their blank sheet of paper, their ideas in their head, and it's a blank sheet of paper? What would you advise them to do?
You need to look at what your concept is. Then you need to look at if there's a market opportunity. So look at what the chances are of it being a success, what success looks like, and then how much money and effort that you will need to deliver that project. They're the fundamental questions you need to answer before you go ahead. And then you need to look at your life, how many mouths to feed, are you responsible for, how much money you need to make and when, and see if it all hangs together.
Yeah, so it's about understanding the business idea, but then also your kind of life idea as well.
Yeah,
And see
yeah.
if the two things marry
I'll
together.
give you an example. So if you want to start an organic baked bean company right now, you're going to need a couple of $100,000 in the front end that you'll need to take in from somewhere, but you'll have to find 50 grand of it yourself. It'll be really hard work, really fun. It will most likely fail, but if it succeeds, you could potentially make a few million quid in 5 years' time. That's the reality of it. If you buy a burger van that has a license to sell burgers outside the football stadium in Portsmouth, where I live, at the end of my road, and it's been there for 8 years, and every week it makes 1,400 quid, that, and it's going to cost you 11 grand to buy the burger van. That's a good business.
Yeah,
because you know that you're going to show up on day one and make that money.
buying a ready-made business can get you to money in your bank account quicker sometimes than starting from scratch.
Yeah. There's no shame in buying a going concern. There's no shame in that. It's to de-risk something by buying something that someone else has made and is already working, whether it's a tanning shop or a cleaning company. There isn't as much glamour in that. People want to create a brand and put their own stamp on it, but you can put your own stamp on those businesses in a smaller way without having to risk your whole life like I did.
Yeah, and that's very true. So often there is a shortcut if you want to run your own business.
Yes.
And you
Buy
want
one
to
that's
earn
already
money.
making money.
Yeah, you can shortcut it. We don't have to try and do everything ourselves and
Hopefully
follow
my dad's
all the
not
linear
listening.
steps.
Hopefully my dad's not listening. He's like, why didn't you do that?
But it's a really lovely insight. You know, I think as humans, we all kind of want to have our own idea, and it's the unique idea. And sometimes there's a faster way to actually get what we really, really want in order to live our lives in a way that kind of fits with our work. So what would you say in the last 4 months have been your biggest challenges in this pivot?
Lack of time because of my parenting obligations, because of the way I parent and how my little family is. I don't live in London. When I got pregnant, I moved out of London. I was living in Soho. And so I had everything on my doorstep and was kind of just could show up at places, and someone was, had a book launch or a gallery. Like Lucy's book launch is tomorrow night, and I've done everything in my power to get there. And I just can't. It's just not possible. So those things are hard. I really want to be there for her, and I just can't. I can't make that work. So there's a sort of, that's been hard, because before Cordelia came along, I would just work all the time I was awake, and it really suited me. I really enjoyed it. So I would say, yeah.
And I think that is that. I mean, I'm a mum as well, and I think that is the reality of running your own business and being a mum, and knowing you want to be there for your children. And there are
I miss her when she's not with me. I miss her now,
And the working woman that you were before versus the working woman you are now is different.
I've lost my bite, honestly. And that's, when you said, when I had that email and I had that sleepless night finishing Whetstone, deciding to switch it off, that part of it was that realization that with my other businesses, if they said, yes, we want you to come and do a demonstration to a load of buyers from the rail industry, and it's in Glasgow and it's tomorrow morning at 5, I'd just be all over it. And now it's just like, even if I had the time, I just think, oh my God, I'm not going that far. I just don't have enough gas in the tank.
Yeah, so you're building your business in a way that kind of fits with that new way of
and what's really interesting about this, and I think this is relevant to pivots, is one of the things that was hard was to accept that it wasn't going to be my story to have a big exit. Pippa, one of my mentees, is absolutely blazing a trail. Her career has far exceeded my and she's far exceeded my career, and a couple of other of my mentees are doing that now. Black Bee Honey's doing really well, and Miso Tasty's doing really well, so Rosa Bloom's doing really well. So I really wanted to have that big financial win at the end of it, not really for the money, but for the kind of glory and the prestige. I'm quite vain in that way. And I was always working towards that, and I expected that to happen. And letting go of this and choosing my kid and my smaller life was having to accept that just wasn't, maybe that's not going to be my story. That's a growing up thing. I didn't, when I was younger, I just thought that everything's possible. And now, I'm 46, and I think, well, there's a lot of things that aren't really possible now, and that's okay.
That's okay, because it's a choice, isn't it? It's about
that I'm making a choice. I'm making a choice to be, I just spent 16 days with my kid not working, which, if you're sole parent, responsible financially, not working for 16 days, that's quite scary. And just spent 16 days literally just lying around looking into my kids' eyes and making chimpanzee noises, or just doing stupid, like licking the back of each other's hand and running off, just all that stupid stuff that a 4-year-old just thinks is the best time ever. Just like walking to the end of the road to go to the bakery, and will you have a gingerbread man or will you have an ice bun, and spending 15 minutes comparing them. I just spent 16 days doing that. It's my choice to do that. And and the thing that goes over the side is, the prestige of me being on stage, having an award, and people thinking that I'm hot shit.
Yeah.
And she thinks I'm hot shit.
She thinks you're hot shit. And you know what? It sounds like that's what's more important to you right now.
Yeah, it is more important for me. Yeah.
But coming to terms with that transition of kind of like, what does good look like, can sometimes feel strange for us. I know, same for
And
me.
I think kids do help us to understand that, though, because one of the big things about shutting Whetstone was that I just didn't want to eat meat, and I didn't want to contribute towards the things that are happening in the world, and going plant-based and cutting down on plastic massively. These products would have been produced in plastic trays. There's no other way to package hot food like that. So we would have, if we'd hit our targets in 3 years, we would have produced 6 million pieces of plastic. And my kid runs down the beach if someone lets go of a plastic bag to make sure it doesn't go in the sea.
Yeah, so does
And
mine.
it's
It's amazing.
yeah, and that's real. And I,
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that from your wonderful stories, that what you're really tuning into at each of these points in time are like what your values are and what really is
yes,
important to you,
yes,
and who you are kind of deep down. And like, when you're about to embark on a business that uses plastic and meat, and actually you're not into those things, that there's a conflict there between a project.
and what's interesting about that is that the conflict wasn't there 3 years prior when I started setting it up,
because we evolved.
and that was and there's been a sort of a seismic shift in consciousness. And you have a choice to either acknowledge that and see that the whole idea of the business is becoming obsolete, or to just crack on. And I just didn't want to crack on. I just wanted to sort of notice that and just think, okay, that's not right for me. Again, with the safety net of knowing that if I hadn't taken Lucy's advice and got the wins that she helped me get career wise, if everything had really gone flat for a few months, I had some savings to support myself, and we can go and live at my mum and dad's if we had to.
Which gave you the space to be able to
Yes,
experiment in where you
definitely.
are now. And one of the
And
things
I would say that's a if you're thinking of pivoting, if there's any way you can buy yourself that space, like save up a bit of padding, and so that you have that thinking time, so that you're not in such a rush, that really helps.
Absolutely. And to build on your point about values, when I left my corporate job, I was working for a spirits company. And when I first started the role, that didn't seem to bother me. But having worked there for 2 years, working on selling more premium vodka to people just didn't fit with me.
Yeah,
And
interesting. Yeah.
I really found that had a real tension every single day in my
Yeah.
motivation.
You just didn't feel good about what you were doing.
Yeah, and when you've got that tension going on inside, it can really start to affect you. So really tuning into what you believe in, whether that's your family, or the product that you're working on, and knowing that there's a right fit for you, I think is really, sounds like that's been a key theme for you as throughout your career.
Yeah.
And so what would the old you, before you started the porridge company, say to the new you?
Well, that's the funny thing. People ask me why I enjoy sort of coaching and Instagramming so much. And it's, those really annoying mottos that people put on Instagram, which I actually can't bear. One of them, which is brilliant, is, be the person that your younger self needed. And I feel like that. It is like being a time traveler. Sometimes when I'm speaking to these kids who are starting businesses, I just feel like I'm telling myself what I needed to hear, but didn't get to.
Yeah, wonderful. And so I'm asking every guest this. What would you say your formula for pivoting is?
I would say you should make an assessment of what your assets are. When we talked earlier about information or experience that you have, which is, other people don't have, then I would look at what you have enjoyed or not enjoyed about the work you've done, so that you can get an idea of what you want to do more of and what you want to do less of. Look at your situation in terms of your responsibilities, like your family. Who am I responsible for? Have a really good understanding of how much money you need to earn, and cut that very fine. So I have no financial leaks. If a credit card company takes £5 out of my account, I notice because I check my account every day and I'll get the £5 back. And then take some time to feel what's right for you. And I do that by, walking, or, whatever people do to relax, yoga, meditation, having quiet time, reading, having some time to just feel where you are and what feels right for you.
Lovely. So taking that space to really
Yeah.
kind of allow those feelings and intuition to come in and feel all of the elements to be able to work that through. Thank you so much, Fleur. That's been really, really interesting
My
and
pleasure.
full of tips. And so what is next for you, and where can we find you?
Definitely on Instagram. I give away loads of, free support and tips and stuff on there because I'm actively growing my Instagram following so that I can, I'm going to get a number 1 podcast. That's what I want to do. And then I want to have a radio show. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we can't wait to listen.
That's very sweet. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Slick Pivot Sessions with me, Liz Ward, the podcast for life's achievers and believers. I hope you've enjoyed listening as much as I've enjoyed making this. Please take a moment to rate and review us on Apple or Google or wherever you get your podcasts. This helps us grow and continue to bring you amazing guests. The show notes have all the links and references from today's session. For weekly pivot inspiration straight to your inbox, sign up for Slick Pivot Sunday, my weekly newsletter. Go to slickpivot.com. Until our next session together, stay nimble and remember, no pivot is ever slick.